The Mysterious Villa and Other Stories by Alfred Vassallo. The Mysterious Villa. The old villa was dilapidated, and it had been like that for a long time. It was huge, shaggy and wilting. Its windows were unevenly boarded shut, giving a menacing look. The paint had worn away, with an unvarying ugly grey. Gales had dripped many of the slates off, and a heavy snowfall had pierced the roof, giving it a flabby, deformed shape. Edward did not let the appearance of the villa from going in it. He walked up the overrun path, climbed the terrace and glanced through the gaps from the wooden panels into the foyer. He went to the front door, and fortunately, it was unlocked. He went in and stared at the house. He was almost hypnotized with its atmosphere. He walked down the hall. The paint was rotting away and the furniture was like junk lying around. As he entered the library room, he felt a sense of history, a foreboding impression. At the end of the hall, you could turn right to go up the stairs. When he climbed them, he counted 22. On the landing looking down the hall there was a closed door. He opened it and looked inside and found it was a bedroom. Edward did not need to look any further, so he returned downstairs and left. As he turned away from the villa, he thought that it was enough to know it suited his purpose. He got into his car, started it and drove away with a smile on his face. Rumors were widespread about the villa. Some said it was sinister. Others said that it was haunted by the ghost of a man who had been found murdered a long time ago. People avoided it and didn't talk about it much. Since the owners of the house were all dead, except of one, who lived somewhere in Australia, the house was left abandoned. The villagers were frightened of it, because they believed the spirit was a vengeful one. Although Edward heard about the ghost rumors, he didn't bother about it, since he didn't believe in ghosts. When he told his girlfriend Jenny that he had found the perfect location for their weekend escapade, and told her about the ghost that lurks in the villa, they just laughed. There were a lot of superstitious people who believed in ghosts, but not these two young lovers. All they wanted is to escape the havoc of the weekend nights in town, for inexpensive weekend by themselves, and the house not only provided them with the perfect location, but it was also free. Few years ago, while the village pub was full of customers, a well-liked village character named Paddy walked into the bar. They said that women were not safe in his presence, especially attractive ones. Paddy, known to be a ladies' man, was also a small-time criminal. After he had consumed far too much alcohol, he said suddenly, that evening as he was passing the villa with his car, probably casing some joints, he'd seen a strange thing in the terrace. The pub owner stopped in the middle of polishing a glass, and the men around the bar exchanged stealthy looks. No one said a word, but everyone was thinking about the ghost of the vengeful man. Everyone looked down at their glasses, and did not say a word. Paddy continued to say that he stopped the car and went to check, taking his torchlight, and to climb to the roof for some lead. But when he was by the front door, he heard a man crying and changed his mind. No one made a move to shut him up, but he could tell that they were scared stiff. When Paddy left, another man tried to calm the situation, saying that Paddy had a reputation of exaggerating things, especially when he had a few. "It's just too bad that there isn't really a ghost," laughed falsely the bartender, filling a small glass with whiskey for him. About an hour later, an atrocious scream came from the street. Everyone in the bar looked up in shock and fear. They did not know if there really had been a ghost out there, or was it Paddy up to his old tricks. The men jumped to their feet and raced to the back door of the tavern, and went out into the street, where they saw Paddy on the ground. The bartender pushed himself to the front and saw the body of Paddy lying with a terrifying look on his face. Paddy managed to get up a bit and whispered something to the bartender. Paddy had sneaked back to the villa, and when he was climbing the stairs he saw walking through the walls a man dressed in black. The local doctor confirmed that Paddy had died with a heart attack probably caused by a sudden shock. Edward and Jenny arrived at the decrepit house. He parked his car at the back, where no one can see it. They sat there for a while. Jenny was a bit apprehensive, after she saw how the villa looked, but her anxious lover persuaded her that was no danger. He smiled and looked tenderly at her. "You're an enigma all right. I can't quite figure you out." "What do you mean?" "I know you were sexually aroused with the idea of a weekend in a supposedly haunted house." Jenny wasn't about to acknowledge anything of the sort. She hadn't been brought up that way. "I wasn't." You don't have to be scared when you're with me." "I am." Feeling slightly irritated with his perceptive observations, she added cuttingly, "You don't know me. We've only met a month." At that moment he threaded his long fingers through her dark thick hair. His touch was surprisingly tender but caught her off guard. She allowed him to angle her face to his. He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. His kiss felt so soothing she closed her eyes and sighed in sheer delight. No one had ever kissed her this way before, and when her wet lips parted, he deepened the kiss further. He whispered something in her ear. Jenny longed to say yes, she liked him, and wanted him, but what she was doing was completely out of character. Irritation flowed in her veins, and she closed her mouth shut. This wasn't like her at all before. She'd always been in control of her emotions. She'd had no notion that feeling weak and vulnerable would cause such sexual arousal, particularly with a man like Edward, whose eyes searched her face, as he waited for her answer. "You know I want to. So why ask?" she finally conceded. "I wanted to hear it from your own lips. Now you know, then let's get in the house and prepare ourselves for a long and enjoyable few days together," he said as he opened the car door. She was fully aware he was trying to overpower her with his personality. "I don't know, Edward," she murmured miserably. It was embarrassing just thinking about it. She did not go to bed with anyone before. It was one of the reasons why she dated so very little. Jenny bit down on her bottom lip. She raised her eyes to his. The breath hitched in her throat at the way he looked at her. He was so primal and masculine. Edward got in again and kissed her lightly on the mouth. "Did I not tell you that we're safe in here?" Jenny was aware that she blushed. "I do, but it's embarrassing." "Do you trust me, Jenny?" She gasped and grabbed his arm, and they looked at each other. The young man was very tolerant. He wanted her at all costs. "It's going to be dark soon, so we'll better get inside, sort out the candles and just go to bed." "What bed? You mean the sleeping bags?" she asked sarcastically. "I told you I have found a bedroom inside with a double bed intact." He laughed as he pulled her out of the car and walked to the main door carrying a small bag each. It was a cold winter night in November when the incident happened. The villa then was occupied by a wealthy family, though there were only 2 brothers left. Their older sister died a year before and their parents few years back. Thomas, the younger brother, immigrated to Australia and never came back, leaving Peter the sole resident of the house. Except for his cook, his gardener and handyman and his manservant, the latter was much needed as Peter was deaf and dumb. That evening after supper, all the servants left the house, leaving Peter with Reverend Mark, who visited him once a week. They were sitting close to each other on the couch. The priest was reading something from a small piece of paper in his hand while Peter had his head down. All of a sudden the door burst open and 2 masked men appeared in the room, both carrying rifles. There was a good reason for the priest to stand up immediately and run to the bookshelves, clutching at the books. It was a grave mistake, because one of the men opened fire and the priest fell down dead. Peter did not know what to do, and when they asked him where the gold, jewelry and money were, He could not answer them because of his handicap. But the robbers didn't know that and took his silence as defiance, and he was killed too. The villagers were shocked and in misbelief. The police investigation took a long time, but eventually they had to give up as they could not find any clues of the intruders. Incidentally, they never got caught. Only few months had passed since the shooting, and rumors of disturbances in the villa had started. At first the rumors were ignored, but when they became frequent and more detailed, the villagers started to believe that the villa was haunted. As time went by, the mystery of the haunted villa became the village chronicle. Edward and Jenny had settled well in the makeshift bedroom of the villa, which was lit by 2 candles both stuck into 2 glass lemonade bottles. Jenny was reading a romantics book while Edward had only one thing on his mind, but Jenny kept resisting his attentions. Eventually she gave in and the 2 young lovers indulged themselves in sweet love-making. Later that night, when the candles were snuffed out, and the couple were sleeping, a cry of "Ma-man" could be heard coming from downstairs. The sobbing continued for a while before Jenny woke up by the noise. She got out of bed and went outside the room. She looked wide-eyed, toward the far end of the hallway, when before her eyes she could see the glowing figure of a man hurrying downstairs. She shivered and her skin prickled in a sudden cold, as she ran in back in the room and woke Edward up hysterically. Edward woke up in a kind of daze. He wasn't sure what woke him. Then he noticed Jenny terrified, and when she explained to him what she had seen he burst out laughing and accused her of imaging things. Then again the crying started again, louder and louder. Did he hear it, or was it a suggestion in his head? He strained his eyes and ears to make sure. He went and picked the candle and lit it. Although both of them were holding each other tight, they were not comforting each other at all. Edward was absolutely petrified, but did not show it for Jenny's sake. She almost ceased breathing for some time as her inner mind told her to freeze and not to make a sound. They did not know how long their fear kept them immobile. But suddenly the raw terror ceased, replaced by cold shivers of apprehension. When they both calmed down, Edward suggested to go downstairs and face the music. They couldn't stay up there and do nothing. Maybe after all, it was the villagers, saw them trespassing and were playing a joke on them. Holding hands they went down the stairs very, very slowly, one step slower than the other. As they climbed down, they could still hear the sobbing of the man. Edward told her to stay by the door of the library, and not to move while he went in to investigate, since the crying was coming from there. As he went in slowly by the huge bookshelves, he saw a man standing facing the books. Edward stopped. The figure did not move either but kept sobbing. "Are you all right?" he said in a scared voice. "Can I help you?" With that, the man turned and Edward realized that he was a priest dressed in a dark brown tunic, covered by a scapular and cloak with a hood. "Yes, you can, my son," said the priest. "Who are you?" asked Edward, still afraid. "I am the priest from long time ago, when this villa was a happy place. It was I who had been killed in here along with poor Peter. So you have decided to scare the villagers shitless, is that it?" "No. Not at all, my son. I have been roaming this house for one reason only. I cannot rest in peace until I fulfill my obligation," explained the ghost. When the young man realized that this man was harmless and obviously mad, he went along with his story. "Why did it take you so long? According to the villagers, you've been haunting this place for more than 50 years. "True, very true. I did not want to scare anyone. On the contrary, I wanted to attract someone to come in, face me and help me get rid of one item which is hidden in here." "A treasure?" smiled Edward. "No, nothing that grand, a piece of paper only. I need somebody to get rid of it for me." "Why? What's in it?" "I'm afraid I cannot tell you." "And you expect a stranger comes in here scared to his teeth, trying to help you, and you won't even give him the reason why? I can give you the reason, of course I can, but I cannot divulge what was written on the paper. I don't understand. Did you know that Peter, the owner of this house, was deaf and dumb? No, I did not know that. Well, he was, and he also was a devout Roman Catholic. Every week I was invited here first to dine with him, and afterwards sit here. I hear his confession. Because he could not tell me his sins, he used to write them down on a piece of paper, and after I read them and absolved him, I used to get rid of the paper in the fireplace. That night when the robbers came in, I panicked, and ran towards the books and put the paper in one of them to hide it and keep it safe. One of the men thought I was going to defend myself and fired at me. And you want me to believe all this? Yes, I would. You see, my son, the secret of the confession is sacred, and cannot be broken. It would have been a great sacrilege, if somebody had found it and read it. I cannot get eternal peace until I get rid of the secret. The priest did not move at all and asked Edward to get closer to him. The young man did not move at first, but then, still not believing that this idiot was a ghost, he went near him. You see that thick book on the third shelf? Asked him, pointing at a book. Which one you're pointing at? Is it the red with the gold print on it? Yes, please bring down, and when you do open it you should find a piece of paper. Edward did as the man told him, and when he brought down the book and opened it, a piece of small folded paper fell on the worn-out carpet, and he picked it up. Is this it? He asked. Yes, that's it. Edward looked at paper carefully and then without hesitation gave it to the priest. If this is what you want, you can have it. I cannot have it. I cannot touch anything. What do you want me to do? Burn it with your candle. Burn it at once. Are you sure? Yes, my son, I am sure. Edward moved the candle under the paper and the flames burnt the paper into ashes. Are you happy now? I burnt it for you? The priest had gone, vanished into thin air. In that same instant Jenny came rushing in. Edward, have you found anything? What do you mean? Have you not heard me talking to the man? What are you talking about? You just came in here a few seconds ago. Few seconds? You must be mistaken. I have been here much longer than that. I had a bloody conversation with a ghost who asked me to burn a piece of paper. I don't believe you. You're making this up. No, I'm not. Look, I show you. Look at the ashes on the carpet. But when Edward looked at the carpet, there was no sign of any ashes, and all he had as proof was the book which he dropped on the floor. The old villa was sold to a big consortium of hoteliers, and they renovated into a beautiful modern hotel, leaving the old structure intact. Nobody ever heard any crying anymore, and mystery of the haunting, which the villagers were so frightened of, was forgotten. Edward and Jenny got married few years later, and had 2 children. On occasions the children sits on the couch listening to their father telling the story of a ghostly priest.
Lycanthropy. I gazed around me as I stood in the dark forest, sniffing the moistened air, searching for the weakest prey. I felt like sinking my teeth into some human flesh which I knew I could find if I was patient enough. I have to masticate the body's meat into my mouth to satisfy my hunger. I need to survive, and to endure I must nourish myself even at a cost of a human life. After all, I am no different than a wild beast, and it is not my fault that I have transformed into this. When the human kill is accessible, then I shall feast until dawn. I shall bite, chew, nip and gnaw with satisfaction, with persistency, with determination, with consummation. I shall grind my teeth until I reach the marrow bone, which is one of my culinary delicacies, especially if the victim should be well built or overweight. After the transition I shall go to my home, have a bath to cleanse myself from the odor of the stinking blood, rest, and once again I shall go and enjoy the company of my human friends. That is until I feel the conversion come over me again, then I shall make an excuse and go back to the forest where another banquet will be awaiting my presence.
Visible yet invisible. The maitre d' of the luxury hotel went to the foyer and called on Mrs. Catherine Williams. Two tall and attractive blonde ladies got up. One got up from a very comfortable armchair, while the other stood up from a stool facing the bar counter. They stared at each other mystified, as they looked like identical twins apart from their dresses, different in style and color. Yes, they both answered at the same time. Your table is ready and the gentleman is already seated. The well-mannered one answered quickly. It's me who is expected. I'm his wife. I think you're mistaken, exclaimed the other woman. No, I'm not mistaken. Ask the maitre d', he knows me personally. Catherine explained, rather confused. Who are you talking to, Mrs. Williams? Asked the maitre d', looking around him, noticing that she was the only one in the foyer. For clarity we would call the prudent lady Catherine, while the impolite woman we name her Kate. It began about 2 years previously. Until then life was normal for these two women. On occasions when one enquired about something on the phone, the assistant would promptly reply, "But Mrs. Williams, you've already enquired about it and I explained it in details." "Yes, Mrs. Williams, you have made an appointment for 2 o'clock this afternoon, the day before yesterday in the morning. Anita made the appointment for you. Did you say you wanted another 12 bottles of the claret?" "What do you mean, madam?" "Your order, which you asked for yesterday, is on its way now." Catherine and Kate couldn't explain the bizarre situation, but they both ignored it until now, as they were facing each other trying to explain to one another that one of them was an imposter. Catherine's statement. "I don't dare close my eyes again. I cannot make sense out of this situation at all. Last night I had a nightmare which had no beginning and no end. I had one of my bad headaches, migraine to be exact, so I went to bed early hoping the darkness would ease the pain. Suddenly I was standing in this wine bar dressed in a revealing evening dress. I had a small black handbag and I was well made up. In truth I am not like that at all. I'm very subtle and not daring at all. The most frightening thing of all is that I am very allergic to makeup. My skin reacts to any cosmetics I put on and the only thing I can wear is perfume. The bar was full of people and I was doing things that I never do. I was drinking alcohol and smoking, which in reality I detest. I can still taste the bitterness of the alcohol in my mouth. I left with a man and went to his apartment in his car. I don't know how or when, but suddenly I was standing on top of a body in the living room. He had a bullet in his head. I know I don't need a psychiatrist. I am not going mad. Sitting here afraid, in my home waiting for my husband, not knowing what is real and what is fantasy. The only certain thing I know is that on my bed this morning I found the bag that I had in my nightmare, but I know that I don't own it. It doesn't belong to me. When I opened it I took out a small gun, dropping it on the floor with disbelief. I could not pick it up." Kate's statement. "The more I see her, the more I hate her. If I could get rid of her once and for all I will, but what will happen to me? There's only one difference between us. I'm the more attractive and the more intelligent, and apart from looking identical we have nothing in common. How the hell did she come into my life, or was it I who actually invaded her privacy? It doesn't matter anymore, what's done is done. She keeps insisting that I am her nightmare. But the murder of the man was anything but a nightmare, and it was not the figment of her imagination. Perhaps she doesn't know it, but I do. The man was found in his apartment with her fingerprints all over the place. The psychiatrist's statement. At first I thought that Mrs. Kate Williams was only an assumed personality for Mrs. Catherine Williams. Then through hypnosis I knew for a fact that it is not an assumed identity. Kate is a separate and distinct personality who happened to be sharing the same body of Catherine. An example of which can be made from Robert Louis Stevenson's novel, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. To a degree, Catherine and Kate is the living counterpart of the said story. The only exception is that Kate Williams knows of Catherine, but Catherine was unaware of Kate. These two identities differ a lot. While Catherine is allergic to cosmetics, her skin will start to swallow and her eyes starts to water, but it doesn't bother Kate at all. Also Catherine, she never touches alcohol or cigarettes, but Kate lives with them daily. Catherine is a virtuous woman, which obviously disturbs Kate considerably. Catherine is harmless and cannot commit murder, but Kate would. The conclusion is that Catherine is a real schizophrenic, which is a mental disorder characterized by a breakdown of thought processes and by poor emotional responsiveness. The truth is, schizophrenia can be successfully managed if one is able to identifying the signs and symptoms at first hand. Most cases of schizophrenia appear in the late teens or early adulthood. However, schizophrenia can appear for the first time in middle age or even later, as in Mrs. Catherine Williams. For a long time it has been widely thought that personality disorders are difficult to treat because they involve such deeply rooted patterns of thoughts, feelings and ways of relating to others. The police inspector's statement. Doubts remain as to whether Mrs. Catherine Williams killed the man in his apartment. At the time she did not confess, but when under the identity of Kate she voluntarily admitted committing the crime. Her husband and the people who knew her personally did not believe her capable of the vicious crimes. It is illegal to imprison an insane person, but since then not one defendant has succeeded in overturning a prison sentence based on mental illness, and many have been committed to mental institutions while they were still delusional. The courts ruled out that a criminal who suffers from schizophrenia, and set free, may allow more mentally ill condemned prisoners to contest their prison or committal sentences. Mrs. Catherine Williams eventually has been committed to an asylum where she still assumes the identity of Kate Williams.
John. A ghost story. It is more of a strange story rather than a scary one. That night it was raining heavily, and she got soaked from head to toes. When she arrived in her very small apartment, she went straight to the bathroom, undressed, had quickly hot shower, and put on a gown on her wet slim body. Carmen put all the soaking clothes in the washing basket, and went to the kitchen to prepare her supper. She soon was to be married to a computer engineer, who was very tall and handsome. After she had her evening meal, a small portion of beef casserole, she took off the gown, and changed it to a very bright green pajamas, took out a suitcase from under her single bed, and took it with her to the lounge, picked the receiver, dialed 4 numbers and listened to her left messages. "Hi, it's Kate. Have a nice wedding. I hope you received my reply for the reception. You did catch the handsome guy after all. Is John coming? I call you again. Bye. This is Melissa Barnard. Thank you for the invitation. I wonder who you'll marry. I can't wait to see." She didn't like packing, not that she had got much to pack, but she had no choice. She was due to leave the rented flat within 3 days, a day after she got married. As she was going through a box of magazines and books, she found an old scrapbook, which she did when she was 12 years old. She started to flick page by page and smiled. Carmen picked another scrapbook. On the cover were printed in large letters decorated with colorful glitter, "Personal, do not read." When she looked at the first page, she saw her photograph, with 2 other girls and a boy. They were all the same age. In those days, she had very long hair which reached halfway her back. September 7th. I had a fight with Kate over a boy. I was ashamed because the boy was watching us. October 12th. Today I was picked to take a part in the school Christmas play. I was thrilled. The boy was chosen too. November 15th. Kate started going out with Godfrey, so I guess that Claire's going with Thomas. Those 2 boys were always together. Do I have a boyfriend yet? No. December 1st. I hated all the boys in my class. They fooled around too much. I think it's stupid, because they always want to kiss. Will I kiss when I grow up? December 18th. 1 week before Christmas. Then the phone rang. She stretched herself and reached for the telephone. "Hello?" She recognized the voice and was very surprised. "John?" "No, I am still up." She listened. "No, not at all. I was packing some stuff. I'm getting ready, that's all. How are you doing?" John told her that he had 2 tickets for a production of Hamlet, and if she wanted to go with him. She asked him for the day, and she agreed to go with him at 6 p.m. Saturday, 2 days day. He insisted to be there and she promised that she won't be late. She did not understand why she accepted the invitation. She thanked him and continued to read from her scrapbook. 1 week until Christmas, she continued to read. "Will I spend Christmas with my boyfriend, when I grow up? I hope he'll be scrumptious." She turned over the page, and she had a shock to see 2 words only, printed in very large letters. Not John. She put the scrapbook in the suitcase with the others, picking up a bunch of photographs of the same period. She gazed at them one by one, reflecting on each for some time. Then something reminded her of her friends. John was not with her crowd those days. She did not even know him. The foyer of the theater was empty, and the performance of Hamlet was about to begin. On a seat by the entrance door was John. He was seated and trying to reach someone on his mobile. He was not successful, because he could hear the same message over and over again. "I can't answer the phone right now. Please leave a message." As he put his mobile in his jacket, he felt that someone was watching him. He lifted his head slowly, and in a corner by the popcorn machine was a little girl with long black hair, dressed in a dark green with thin black stripes dress and brown sandals. She was standing still, her head down gazing to the carpeted floor. The young man felt uncomfortable and moved his head away from her, but the girl stood there like a statue. He tried his mobile again to no avail, so irritated he got up from his seat and went to the booking desk asking the clerk if someone had previously asked for him. He explained to her that he was waiting for his friend, who was supposed to watch the production together, but there were no messages for him. He then asked her about the girl by the popcorn machine, and as he turned to show her, the little girl was gone. John went back to the chair and waited. He felt unsettled and tried the mobile again, but nobody answered except for the same voice message. "Hi Carmen, it's me John. Where are you? I'm at the foyer waiting for you. I think the play has started, but that doesn't matter. I hope you're okay. Please call me as soon as you read this message." He got up and went to the machine where the girl stood, and looked around him. The foyer was in complete silence and empty, as the clerk left her place too. "I'm in here," said a voice, which was that of a little child. He did not see anyone, so he followed from where the voice came, through a hall that leads to a studio theater. He went in, but couldn't see anything as it was very dark. He stood there waiting. "Over here," the voice said. He tried to locate the light switch but could not find any, so he walked through the studio, very slowly so he won't trip up himself. He reached the platform and the voice sounded again. "I'm waiting for you." John saw the shadow of the little girl running out of a side door, and he ran after her. He was standing under a spiral staircase, looked up, some light was coming in from the window upstairs. On top of a landing, the little girl was peeping through the metal rails. "I'm waiting for you." "Who are you?" John asked. "I am still waiting for you, John. I've been waiting for you since I was 12 years old." The little girl started to laugh out loud, continuously, until her laughter became hysterical. Carmen got married that same day, while John was committed to a mental hospital, to be treated for serious mental disorder.
Early one morning. That morning I was determined to buy a new DVD player so that I can archive my favorite television shows. The bus I wanted to catch was the 9:18, the weather was appalling, drizzling with rain, but the rain doesn't stop you from going out. When I was all wrapped up in a heavy coat, yes, I forgot to mention it was bitterly cold too, I made sure that I switched off any hazardous electric appliances and the animals were well taken care of, in case I am late. I shut the door behind me about 9:10, 7 minutes is more than enough to reach the bus stop. When I arrived at the bus shelter, I was only about 10 seconds away when I saw the bus just few yards away from reaching the stop. I waved like a madman for the driver to notice me, but the bastard did not stop. Now, I had to wait another 15 minutes for the 9:33. I was so angry and upset that I didn't notice that I hadn't brought the umbrella with me, so now I was standing there like a spare prick at a wedding, getting wetter and wetter watching cars passing by. All types of vehicles from small ones to huge lorries, noticing the different colors, and the wipers moving from one side to the other. And still there I was, waiting, now completely soaked. I could have used one of those wipers for my glasses, and would you believe it, I realized I had left home without a handkerchief when usually I carry 2 or 3 in separate pockets. I was about to change my mind and forget about purchasing the DVD player. I thought it was not important enough for me to get pneumonia. Then finally through the drenched glasses I spotted it. The next bus was coming from afar, too far for my liking. I got on the bus, paid my fare from some loose change I had in my trousers pocket and sat down trying to sort out the state I was in. I am sure I looked like a drugget craw. That early morning keeps reminding me that you never know what is waiting for you round the corner. Maybe another sympathetic driver would have stopped for me just for a second or two. I would not have stayed bloody 18 minutes shivering with cold and getting absolutely soaked. When I arrived in town, I went straight to the shop where I saw the DVD player advertised. I went right in and without hesitation I told the assistant that I wanted to buy a specific player, and I gave him the model number and all the necessary information about the product. It wasn't before long the man was holding a box. He placed it on the counter and started to sort out the bill on his cash machine. But then it happened. I couldn't find my wallet with all the credit cards and the cash. The man looked at me suspiciously and I explained that in the rush to catch the bus I had forgotten my wallet. As I left the shop very disappointed, I could feel flurry of snow coming down. I was cursing all the gods and all the saints, angels and cherubs, all of them at the same time, because I had to walk home as I did not have enough change to take another bus. Bloody DVD player, next time I will buy it through the internet.
Killing in the park. It was a dark and stormy night. It was also the night of my desire, and it will be made splendid by my banquet that is waiting for me. The preparation of this tasty gastronome dish will be covered by perfumed wreaths of the shocked mourners. It was about 10 on a cold evening mid-November. It was already dark and the storm began to announce its arrival. I prepared all the tools I needed for the slaughter in a heavy bag and left the house ready to capture my ingredients. I walked slowly to the public park. It was not far from where I lived and I was not in a hurry. I knew exactly where I was going and who I was going to find. I was looking for one particular filthy vagrant who does nothing but sip from plastic bottles of cheap cider every day. After this night he will not touch a drop ever again. I shall make that a solemn promise. The path in the park was deserted and now the night was closing in quickly. I arrived in plenty of time and I saw him sitting on a bench eating some sort of sandwich which he probably found earlier in a dustbin. I stopped and looked around me, and when I was satisfied with the surroundings I moved towards him and politely asked him if I could sit down beside him. He wouldn't have been so pleased to accept the quarter bottle of whiskey I offered him if he knew what was coming to him. I sat with him and talked for a while. He was so delighted with the whiskey that he did not bother to eat any more and started to gulp it down, wiping his mouth with his dirty clothes. It did not take him long before he started to doze off. The sleeping pills I had put in the whiskey worked wonders. The first part of my work had been achieved. I dragged the man under a huge oak tree surrounded by huge trees, and it was a suitable enough place to remain unseen if by an unfortunate circumstance somebody passed by. I stripped him naked and tied his hands and feet, and I even gagged him with a small dirty handkerchief he had in his top pocket. I didn't want him to talk to me anymore. After that I put all his clothes in a plastic bag. My intention was to burn them when the deed was done. I also threw his shoes away in the middle of the park so that they would be found easily. I went back to the bench where I found him and sat down for a rest, taking out a flask full of branded whiskey from my inside pocket and drank from it. I already started to smell the aroma of my delicious recipe cooking. It should be a banquet to remember. Food, glorious food. He will soon be dead, I thought. There were enough pills in that whiskey to kill an ox. When I was sure he was no longer with the living, I started to cut him up. I continued to cut through the middle of his body just below his belly button. Then I went through his legs below his behind. I gripped hold of his penis and with one blow I had it tangling in my hand. I could see it sizzling in the frying pan for my breakfast. The hard bit was cutting off his head, his feet and his arms, but I managed. The feat was complete. I took the pieces of the body and threw them one by one along the park to be found easily. When I was satisfied, I cleaned my face with some clean wipes I had in the bag and left for home, leaving the tools bag behind me. I left all the evidence on purpose and carried with me 2 small plastic freezer bags filled with his penis and his liver. Why did I want to get caught? What was the point in producing a piece of art if I won't be recognized for it? I think I watched too many horror films. If not, I must be completely doolally, and if you don't know what it means, I shall tell you. Doolally, originally doolally tap, meaning to lose one's mind, derived from the boredom felt at the Doolally British Army transit camp in India. When I arrived home, I had another stiff drink of whiskey, put the 2 bags in the fridge and took a long hot bath so that when the authorities come searching for me they shall find me clean and fresh. The last chore was to cook my gastronom meal. I'm going to treat myself to braised liver and onions, mashed potatoes and fresh boiled leeks, not to mention a nice bottle of Chianti which was already decanting. And here is the dish I prepared earlier, and to summarize, you'll need a body. From it you'll remove the liver, cut them into 2 cm/3/4 inch thick slices. You'll need 4 tablespoons plain flour, salt and freshly ground black pepper, olive oil, 20 baby onions, peeled, 175 milliliters red cheap wine, for crying out loud don't use the Chianti. 500 milliliters hot beef stock, 2 sprigs fresh thyme, 1 bay leaf, and 350 grams carrots cut into thick julienne. Preheat the oven to 180 centigrade or gas 4. Place the liver slices onto a plate. Dredge with the flour and season with salt and freshly ground black pepper. Heat a casserole dish until hot, then add the oil. Add the liver to the pan in batches and fry until golden brown and slightly crusted. Remove from the pan and repeat with the remaining liver. When all the liver is browned, add the onions and the wine and let it simmer. Cook for 30-45 minutes. Next time when it's a bright and starry night, tune in, and from my prison cell I shall broadcast another recipe, and I shall show you step by step how to prepare a scrumptious stuffed succulent breast.
The Doll. Wayne Taylor was a below-par performer, and his audience were those in a sleazy clubs, like a hazy snapshot, appealing only to wild people having a wild time, adds up to a portrait of shady entertainment. His jokes were all past their sell-by date, and the audience treated him with contempt. Wayne's partner was Jimmy Boy, who had orange hair, jet black eyebrows, carnival red lips and cheeks, and wore dark blue leather jacket, on a light blue shirt and spotted blue and white bow tie. Wayne was not at all impressed with the attitude of his partner, especially when they were performing their act, live. Though lately the audience would get better and showered them with applause. What do you say? Are we to continue with our business? How could this be? Said Wayne, utterly shocked. Be what? How could you be real when you are made of plastic? He tried to reason to himself. I am what I am. From his mouth came long hysterical demonic laughter. You made me real. You formed words into my head, you moved my mouth and gave me a tongue. Don't you get it, you idiot? You made me what I am today, and I sincerely hope you are satisfied. Once again from his big mouth came that long frantic satanic laughter. Wayne thought that he was dreaming, or worse having a nightmare, except for the fact that he was there staring at it. In a blind panic he placed his hand onto its mouth to stop him from talking anymore, but then Jimmy Boy bit him. He came out of the building, which was his home for the last 6 months, carrying an medium-sized suitcase, and found the taxi waiting for him. He shook the hands with the man who saw him out of there and climbed down 15 steps, and approached the car. The taxi driver took the suitcase from him and put it in compartment. Wayne opened the door and sat at the back, and when the car took off, he looked back at the huge building which was his home for the last 6 months. It wasn't a long journey and it took less than an hour to arrive to his house. He then paid the driver who was waiting at the back with his luggage and thanked him. The taxi left and Wayne stood still in front of his old house and looked up at the windows, but there was no sign of life. Nobody was waiting for him. He opened the door with a key, and went inside, shutting the door behind him. He left the luggage in the middle of the room. While he looked around 3 rooms, nothing seemed to be touched or removed. It was the same as it was before he went away, except that it stayed clean of dust, which meant that the person who was close to him several years ago was still looking after it. He sat down on an armchair and with his foot he reached for the luggage, and moved close enough to reach his hands. He opened it and from one side he took half bottle of vodka, unscrewing the top, and drank straight from the bottle. He screwed back the top and put the bottle on the floor by the side of the chair. He put his arms round his shoulders and with his head facing the ceiling closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes a couple of hours later from a weary sleep, he saw Mandy looking out of the window. "Did you have a good nap?" said Mandy, realizing he woke up. "What are you doing here?" asked Wayne, standing up and stretching himself. "I've been coming here once a week to look after your place," she said, "even though you haven't asked for me once." She continued, but he did not answer. "How are your hands anyway?" she continued. "My hands?" Wayne looked at his hands. "There is nothing wrong with them." "Why?" "Because in 5 months you never picked up a pen and paper and wrote to me." She confronted him. Wayne spoke again. "You know how it is." "What is she doing here?" a voice said. Wayne turned his head round in an instant. He knew that voice anywhere, but he could not see anybody. "What's wrong, Wayne?" asked Mandy, noticing he turned pale. "Nothing, I thought I heard someone calling me," he uttered. "Are you angry that I kept in touch? I mean that I looked after your house." "Not at all, it's very good of you," said Wayne sincerely. "Get her out of here, we don't need her," said the voice again. Wayne turned and ran towards the other rooms, then he went to the front door, opened it, looked outside and came back in, slamming the door. "Is something bothering you, Wayne?" she asked him worriedly. Wayne raised his voice. "I told you I am all right." Then he calmed down quickly. "I'm sorry, Mandy, I am not feeling well, all that. I've been having bad dreams. It's okay and you don't have to be afraid of me anymore. I don't think you should come and see me anymore. It wouldn't be safe," he warned her. "Yes, I know, Mandy, there are things about me that you don't know. If you would know the truth you wouldn't want to be with me." "What is this?" she asked, but not curious. "Something which happened a long time ago, something bad." "What if I told you that I already knew?" Wayne looked at her. "Knew what?" "Your secret," she said with a sympathetic voice. "My secret?" he asked, and he walked away from her to another room. "Yes, while you were away I had to open your letters to see. You had no right to read my letters." He interrupted instantly. "They're personal." But what?" he said angrily. "I think you better leave now. I'm sorry that I have upset you. I thought I was doing the right thing." She felt very guilty and was very apologetic. "That's the trouble with you, you think too bloody much," he said as he picked up the bottle of vodka from beside the chair and the suitcase. "I'll be in the bedroom, when you get bored you may leave." Wayne left the lounge and went straight to the bedroom without looking back, closing the door behind him. Mandy did not know what to do, so she picked up her handbag and left the apartment. In the bedroom Wayne knelt down and from under his bed pulled out a large rectangular black box and put it on the mattress. He looked at it for some time, then he opened it. "You took your time," the voice said. "So it was you all the time," said Wayne to Jimmy Boy. "Who else would it be? I'm the only voice that talks in your head. Come on, take me out of this damn box," ordered the dummy. Wayne picked him up carefully and sat him down on a chair which was by the window and opened it. The fresh breeze felt better on his face and he looked at the dummy sitting on the chair. Jimmy stared at him. "I thought they were never going to let you out of that madhouse." "Excuse me," objected Wayne, "resting home if you don't mind." "I told you she knows. What do we do?" asked Wayne. Nothing, not yet. What if she tells? She won't because she loves you. And if she comes back? Then you have to do something about her, replied the dummy. What do you expect me to do? Asked Wayne a bit weary. Ditch her. Get rid of her as soon as possible. I am not sure about that, replied the foolish ventriloquist. She knows your little secret, said Jimmy sarcastically. That's true. I forgot about that, admitted Wayne. That's settled, Dan, said Jimmy, and please make sure you get me some new clothes. The ones I'm wearing stinks like hell. The next morning Wayne had an appointment with a new psychiatrist. He did not want to go, but he had to, otherwise he'll be in a lot of trouble. That was one of the reasons that they let him leave the asylum. He had to abide by the rules, and if he didn't, he'll go straight back in under the watchful eyes of doctors and nurses. When he arrived at the psychiatrist, he was surprised to find that it was not a clinic or even an office but a private house, and when he pushed the doorbell he was bewildered to find that the psychiatrist was a woman of not more than 35 years old. She let him, and she introduced herself, Dr. Ligia Dabrowski. She was very beautiful tall lady, with long black hair and a slim body. She told him to sit down, and as he sat on the sofa, and to his amazement she sat beside him, expecting that she'll sit on a very comfortable armchair with a notebook in her hand. How are you feeling? She asked. Fine, yes, I am doing all right, he answered. I mean, since you came out of the hospital? Yesterday, was it? Yes, it's nice to be independent again after 6 long months. I went to my apartment thinking I had to do a lot of work, cleaning I mean, but to my surprise it was all cleaned up. I did not know that my girlfriend kept looking after it. Was she there when you arrived? No, she came afterwards, but she did not stay long, he said in an anxious voice. Did something happen between you two? She asked. We had a row, everything was all right, until she told me that in my absence she was reading my letters that I've received. I thought that was out of order. Yes, I can understand, she slightly agreed, but on the other hand, since you were not there, maybe she thought that they could be important documents. But because of that she found out something about me, and I don't like that at all. He was very annoyed and he showed it. What did she find out? Well, something. He hesitated and realized that he was talking too much. Nothing really, it's not important. Everything is important if you want to get cured completely. Dr. Ligia explained. I was never ill. You had a severe breakdown. She looked at him straight into his eyes. You were working too hard, night after night with the dummy on your lap. Of course, that's what I do, I'm a ventriloquist, said Wayne, getting frustrated. Yes, I know, but when you broke down, you maintained that the dummy was talking to you. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the ventriloquist that makes the dummy speaks, right? Wayne was not expecting this kind of questioning, and he felt that it was like an interrogation and not a medical session. Yes, that is true, but it is also true that Gimme Boy talks to me. She asked, is he still talking to you? I meant was. He said loudly, am I not allowed to make a mistake? Calm down, Wayne. I want to help you, and I want you to understand that. There is no need to get so uptight. Wayne apologized and the session continued for half an hour more, and he left to visit her again the following week. He did not see Mandy for a few days, but his dreams were getting worse. He decided to go and see his psychiatrist, so he drove to her place on the off chance that she will be there, and she was. I need to talk to you, he said to her as she opened the door. Why don't you sit down and we talk about it? He went in carrying a wooden luggage and sat down, and she noticed that he was very anxious, so she sat down beside him. Wayne, these last few years I have dealt with a lot of people with the same condition like yours. Condition? Yes, people with special disorders and dual personality. So your relationship with Jimmy is so real that we'll make a good thesis for your research? He interrupted. No, not at all. I am here to help you. She assured him. I am not mad, I haven't got split personality or whatever you call it. The pressure of my work got to me and I broke down, that is all. I know all your history, so don't worry about it. Now tell me why you are here? Wayne started to be fidgety and he was playing with his fingers a lot. Things are happening again. Have you gone off your medication? Wayne denied. Tell me what's been going on? Hang on, Wayne, and listen very carefully. You have to go back right now. No, I did not come here so that you section me again. Is this your kind of help? I mean to help you, and to help you I need you to be far away from situations that could lead you to trouble. She said to him, knowing that he was lying. Everything is going to be just fine. I'll look after you. I cannot go back in there. Maybe they have released you too early. You don't want to have another total collapse, do you? No, of course not, he said, very frightened. You need to help me, I know that, but do not send me back, please. All right, but you have to trust me. I'll try. And he calmed down a bit. I'm going to try some aggressive therapy with you. What's that? Nothing for you to worry about. I only ask to do as I say. Wayne, I want you to think of something that calms you. Think of some place where no one can harm you, where you feel safe. Now close your eyes and think back to when you were small. Wayne obeyed her command. He rested his head on the back of the sofa with his eyes closed. You're with your parents again. What's happening? Something bad, he uttered with his eyes closed. Continue, don't shy away from me. Tell me what it is that is happening. They are taking Jimmy from me. And what do you think of that? I hate them for it. They shouldn't do that. They think he's evil. What do you do? I go to my room crying. But then Jimmy says, it's okay, we'll be all right. That was the same night your house caught fire? Tell me, Wayne, who started the fire? She asked. Wayne doesn't answer and started to resist. Was it you? Is that why you were taken away? There is silence and he doesn't move. Who started the fire, Wayne? Who do you think? Said a voice. The doctor looked cautiously around her and suddenly Wayne screamed and stood up. Dr. Ligeia got to him quickly and grabbed his face. Okay, Wayne, it's only me. We need to do something about him. Okay, calm down. Have you got the medication with you? He put his hand in his pocket and took out a small red plastic bottle and gave it to her. Stelazine, they're really heavy psychotics. She exclaimed as she read the label. I know. He admitted and took the bottle from her, opened it and swallowed one without water. She's going to section you again, you idiot, said the voice from the box. Later that evening, Ligeia was relaxing at her home with a glass of red wine, listening to some unorthodox music from the Far East. Her mind was occupied with her trip to China in few weeks' time. She had never been married and she never wanted to get too much attached to the male species. She stayed enjoying her own company for another hour or so when she decided to have a hot bath. She poured another glass of wine and went upstairs to the bathroom where she turned on the hot water, put a herbal bag which consisted of lavender, sage, rosemary and rose petals. The psychiatrist believed in relaxation in a big way. She went to the bedroom to get undressed. She took off her tight top and removed her brassiere which was covering her small but solid breasts. She unzipped her tight black skirt and removed her brief knickers and went straight to the bathroom where she felt the water to see if it was very hot. She was enjoying the hot water while sipping slowly her red wine. The soapy water was covering her whole body. She closed her eyes and relaxed. Do you think you're going to get him locked back in that horrible place? Said a voice from outside the bathroom. Ligeia raised her head and listened. My imagination is running away with me, she thought. Again there was silence and she laid back into the water. In an instant she felt a pair of hands on her shoulders pushing her down. She had no time to scream, but she tussled a lot. Whoever was holding her was very strong, and from under the water she could hear the word bitch mumbled over and over again. After few minutes she stopped fighting the assailant and slipped away unconscious. The next evening Mandy decided to visit Wayne at his home. She was very upset that they had fallen out. She understood his frustration for reading the letters that was sent from the asylum, but she wanted to make up for her mistake, and she was going to try and persuade him to forgive her. It was a long road to his house, and she couldn't but think about him and how much she cared for him. She turned on the radio and she started to listen to a local station playing some music from the 60s. After a song or two the news came on, and one of the main items was the suspicious death of Dr. Ligia Dabrowski, who seemingly drowned while having a bath. Mandy knew her through Wayne and had a shock. After about half an hour she arrived at Wayne's house. She parked her car and got out of it. Outside the house was bare, and the only sound one could hear was the twittering of some birds from a distant tree. The slight breeze was blowing her hair, and she walked around the house to see if Wayne's car was parked somewhere else, but could not see it. Maybe he put it in the garage, she thought while she kept staring at all the windows the house had, but there was no sign of anybody. She decided to get in. She still had the spare keys that he gave her long time ago. When inside she looked around on the ground floor, but there was no sign of Wayne. She climbed upstairs, and also it was empty of any life. She started to climb the stairs to reach the third floor when she thought she heard voices coming from there. She got up slowly, and from a door she could hear two voices, and although the hall was quite dark she didn't dare to go closer. "I don't know what to do with you. I always get into trouble because of you. Your trouble is you spent too much time with women. But you cannot just go and kill people." "Says who? I was thinking I should get rid of you once and for all." "What did you say? If you try to get rid of me you are dead." Mandy couldn't make up what the voices were saying, but she knew that one of them was Wayne, who sounded terrified. She turned to go back downstairs when Wayne opened the door and came out carrying the wooden box where he keeps Jimmy. When he saw Mandy he got a fright. "Get out of my way," he said to her. "Interfering bitch, she has to die," said the voice from the box. "No!" shouted Wayne. "What's happening? Where are you going?" "I'm going to get rid of him once and for all." "Who?" she asked. "Jimmy. Who else? I am not safe with him around me anymore." As he kept striding fast to the outside door. "I just heard on the news that your psychiatrist has been found dead in her house," Mandy told him as she tried to catch up with him. "I know," he said, angry and frightened. Outside he ran to the garage door and opened it and went in looking for something. After a while Mandy saw him coming out with the box and carrying a jerry can. Wayne went straight to the woods far away from the house, and when he found the right spot he put down the wooden box containing Jimmy on the ground. He turned the cap of the jerry can, and poured all the petrol on the box. From his pocket he took out a box of matches. From the ground he picked up a small dried branch. He wet it with the petrol from the box and lit it. He moved few steps backwards and threw the branch on the box, which burst into vicious flames. Mandy arrived in time to see the box blazing, and she grabbed his arms for comfort. The fire took a while to consume the box, but when it died down there was not much left of it. Together they went into the house cuddling each other. Wayne sat down on the sofa exhausted and troubled with the decision he had taken. Mandy sat very close beside him. "I always loved you," he said with grief. "I know you did," replied Mandy. "I'm so sorry I ever doubted you." Wayne took her into his arms and cuddled her. "I'm glad I'm all alone with you now," she said. Wayne lifted her head and stroked her hair. "So am I," he uttered as he dropped his hands to her neck and started to choke her slowly. Mandy couldn't get away from him. She was too small and too weak to overpower him. "So am I, bitch, so am I," he laughed in Jimmy's voice.
The Mysterious Villa and Other Stories. By Alfred Vassallo.